Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sharper Edge podcast with Betty Parker. I'm so glad that you are here yet another week. I hope you've had an opportunity to listen to the last three episodes. We are on this quest, this continued journey towards greater self awareness. So I keep bringing guests each week that emulate different styles. There are four in particular that I want to introduce you to. Now, we've already talked to the dominant style with Deneen Ambersley. Last week, we had a crew of people who are the social people, and that's why I brought a team of them because they love collaborating and working together and bouncing off of each other, their ideas and their comments, and they just love chatter and communications. That's my people. Now, today we're going to be talking to another style that's very people focused, but they bring a calming effect to any relationship, whether it's at work or in your personal lives. They are the people who are sometimes thought of as, being so gentle that their kindness can be taken for weakness. So I've invited Dr. Leslie Bessellieu. She's a psychologist. She had a practice here in Columbia. She's done great and extensive work with various clients around, just examining themselves and dealing with some of the hardships and the difficulties of relationship building. She emulates the style. I think she's very much this particular style. You'll notice it just by her demeanor. And I hope you'll get into some of the conversation we're having by dropping comments about your experiences in the comment section, whether you can relate to this style because it's you, or just because you work with people like this and what kind of experience you've had with them. I'm interested in hearing your story as well. And share this with somebody who might have a similar style. And you all can start a discussion about it as well. So I'm excited about Dr. Leslie being here, and I think you'll be interested and find some of the comments that she's making very intriguing and something that requires more discussion. So let's stop in and take a listen.
Hi, Betty. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're able to stop in because you bring so much value to our conversations. You and I have talked about a lot of things over time. You are a psychologist, so you have sat and worked with people, various people for, years and helping them to transform because your company is transfer. Go ahead.
Transformations, consulting, and leadership development.
Absolutely. So Leslie does pretty much what I do. She's just got some big old credentials by her behind her name. She's a PhD, and she's actually had a practice. I don't know if you still have your practice available, but I know she's had a practice where she has provided counseling to people and helping them to deal with themselves. Right, Leslie?
Right. Yeah. So I no longer have a private practice, but this company was really designed to help me move into the executive coaching space. So it allows me to provide executive coaching services and then leadership development, as well as every other thing that I enjoy doing under one umbrella.
Absolutely. There's so much to do
Yes.
under that umbrella. I always tell people, yeah, mine is a training and development company. The training part is self-explanatory. You're in a classroom or you're online and you're actually doing training to a group of people, but the development piece is a lot of stuff. It is
Exactly.
coaching, right? It might be executive coaching, it might be individual coaching, team coaching, all of
Right.
this, this work that comes with it. So
Mhm.
as you consult with people and help them to do these deep dives into them, I think this is a big part of leadership development too. How do we learn to lead unless we understand how we are as leaders? And then to be a great leader, you got to understand how you are as an individual. So there's
Exactly.
one particular style I want us to talk about today. And I do believe you mirrored this. I know you haven't taken the assessment that I normally use to identify this, but here's what I observe in you. For this particular style, you all are very patient. You have this calming effect. You're great listeners. You are very complimentary. Y'all bring stability to any environment, whether it's at work or home. You're nurturers, I think, just by nature. And you will take a back seat sometimes to make sure that other people's needs are met. So is that do you see yourself that way? Because that's kind of how I've seen you over the years.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And so it's interesting to hear it. One of the most consistent feedback I've gotten over the years has been that I'm a great listener. And so I guess I'm that way for a number of reasons. I've always been the observing type. And so when I enter a room, I'm not the type that's a social butterfly, but I have to scope things out. Same way when I meet people. I love people, I really enjoy connecting with others, but I'm the type of person where I really want to get to know you first for myself. And so when I join organizations or what have you, then I'm the one that's going to try to meet with folks one on one. And if we're meeting by Zoom, then I'm sending a chat, after I've seen people in actions, trying to figure out, okay, who would I like to get to know more? And so, um, all of those attributes you say, yeah, I'm that person that's sitting back, observing, just trying to figure out, first of all, how do I fit in?
Mm.
I think that's what it is I really want to make sure I can contribute and be of value. But in order to know that, I've got to see I've got to read the room and see what's already there so that I can see the gaps, um, as well as the strengths. And then I try to fill in and help where I can. So some of the, I think I was telling you beforehand, I've taken a number of different personality assessments over the years, or just kind of workplace interpersonal style assessments. And it comes out quite consistently that I'm supportive or
Hmm.
helper or the collaborator. And then when I look at my roles in life over the years as a psychologist, someone who used to teach at the university, and even when I did that, my whole focus for teaching was so I can get to know students and help them move through, figure out a career, figure out a direction, figure out what to do when they graduate. So I've always been in the role of supporting, nurturing, mentoring,
Hmm.
helping. And so when I stumbled into the field of leadership, it was really like a wonderful marriage. Because I said, this is great. I love being able to work with leaders and helping them get in touch with who do they want to be as a leader? How do you
Hmm.
help other people? And leadership is all about developing others, supporting, helping, observing, analyzing, and then figuring out what resources are needed to help your team grow and help folks be the best team members they can be.
Yeah, I want to draw a distinction from my last group that I interviewed last week. So we had these wild and over the top, very social people, right? And they talked a lot about, being very connect. Their whole point is I want to connect with people. I love relationship. They love to have a good time. And I want our audience to recognize that you too, this particular style that you represent also loves people. It's just that the folks I was with last week are crazy. It's just all they loud, they chatty, they all this kind of stuff. So where you are also one who likes to connect with people just as they are, you bring a calmer approach to it. So when we're off the
Mhm.
chain, that other crew is off the chain, you bring a little stability and a little stability. That's what I'm looking for, stability. They're civil over there, but they're not stable. So, and I
They're
love them
fun to
because
be. Hey, they're fun to be around, and I like sitting next to them in meetings because I know I can crack up and I'll have a good time. But yeah,
absolutely, yeah, and
it's
because I
different.
believe I belong to that group, okay, so I
Okay,
can speak about them very clearly.
right.
But you bring another aspect of the whole people focus, and I
Hmm.
think you fit right in with your career because you would have to be a good listener if you're going to be
Hmm.
a psychologist who you're learning people, you talk to people, you're developing people, and then you're
Hmm.
counseling people. Now you're going to counsel leaders on what's the best way to lead your team, so it fits in nicely. I find that the styles assessment, even though they're more about helping people to become more self-aware, I think
Hmm.
people tend to do well when they can match their style with the type of work that they're doing. So when
Sure.
I work in healthcare, I find that a lot of people of your style are natural nurturers, as I mentioned. So I find
Hmm.
like a lot of nurses fit into this style.
Hmm.
They're so
Yeah.
thoughtful, they're so concerned for somebody else's welfare, and they help in the healing process, and people
Mhm.
really migrate to them. They're attracted to them because they just bring something, to that individual that's really warm and nurturing.
And it's needed. So nurses are dealing with people who not only are hurting or they have something medically wrong, but many times the people are afraid. People are anxious, and and sometimes when people are afraid and anxious, they don't know what to say. They don't know how to convey how they're feeling. Sometimes they're minimizing their symptoms. Sometimes they don't know if it's important or what they should share. And
Mhm.
so, for a nurse to be able to provide that calm atmosphere so that the person can trust them to tell what's going on, and for the
Yeah.
nurse to be able to listen for not only what they're saying, but for what they're not saying, and know how to draw people out so that they feel comfortable, sharing what's really wrong. It's a necessary skill, but it's great when people are connected and know that this is my passion, this is my ministry, this is my
Mhm.
calling. And we see
Mhm.
that in a lot of really good nurses.
Yeah. You know what I've been noticing lately a lot, and I've had some conversation. I had to do a talk with some people doing some risk management last month or a couple of months ago. But I even noticed in a doctor's office, they now have signs telling people about not being, I don't want to use the word violent, but yeah, some of them,
Mhm.
how not to treat, the folks who are here to take care of you. So, this behavior, bad behavior will not be tolerated in our office. And I'm thinking, why in the world would you have to tell that to somebody who is actually here to help you? If I'm a patient coming in, why would I misuse or mistreat the man or the woman that's coming in here to take care of me? But apparently, this goes on far more than we recognize. And it's a shame you have to tell people how to treat people who want to make you feel better. I get it that they're dealing with people on a day when they're at their worst, right? I feel bad. I've been injured. Something's going on in my life that brought me here to this medical
Yes.
facility. But don't
Hmm.
take it out on the very people who are there to help you. So when
Yes.
you think about that style that I'm telling you about, that's very people focused and so nurturing and loving, what do you think they need in order to just kind of traverse a very difficult world that's not as loving as they are empathetic and compassionate as you all are?
What does who need?
What do you all how do
What
you,
do we need
yeah, yeah,
from other
how
people?
do you survive in a crazy world like this where you're trying to give your best and you just don't like a lot of the crazy stuff that's happening out there where people don't practice compassion, but yet you
Yeah.
got to live in it. How do you navigate a world like that?
By constantly reminding myself that a lot of people, first of all, don't look at the world like I do. And so to be able to say, okay, well, this person is clearly needy. This person is clearly in pain. This person may not have the skill set to
Mm.
recognize what they're doing and the impact they have on me or any other person. So it's kind of like a constant reminder that there are a number of people that are hurting. And so, because for me, I guess this is why I came to this field, is I always wondered about other people's motivations. And so when I see people behaving badly or behaving, some who are just behaving differently, I'm always trying to understand why.
Mhm.
So it helps me to know that you're not being mean or ugly or whatever because you don't like me, because you don't know me.
Right.
You're being this way because something is wrong. Something is going on. You might have just gotten some bad news, or you might
Mhm.
just really be in some pain, whether it's physical pain or psychological pain. But for me to come up with an explanation for someone's behavior helps give me that distance I need, but it also helps humanize them at the same time.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, you're very thoughtful in that regard because most of us, that style I come from, we get kinda emotionally involved, and sometimes we match energy, which is not good. So you're the type that will step back for a minute and observe and try to understand the why behind it and all that, and I think that's essential in order
Hmm.
to not get caught up in all of the stuff that you're seeing in front of you. Do you
Hmm.
feel like though at times this particular style, people feel like they can just kind of steamroll over them though? They feel like, because they are so patient and kind and, willing to step back and let people be who they are, that sometimes folks can take advantage of that kindness and that, ability to not react so readily when people are being mean and hurtful.
There may be a tendency. So I haven't had personally, I have not had people do that to me.
Good,
I think it takes probably a while for people to see all the other characteristics and to see that I can be firm, that I can set boundaries and limits. So,
good,
there's always a risk that people will see you as kind and think that it's weak. But I'm a big person for setting boundaries.
good.
So just because you are in my circle doesn't mean that you get my entire space.
Mm.
So
Okay.
if you're gonna behave badly or you're gonna do something, I'm quick to set limits. So, but not everybody's like that, and I won't say that all folks who have similar characteristics have issues setting limits. I just think we all
Mhm.
need to figure out the best way to do that and make sure that we don't allow people to take advantage of us. So I'll tell one quick story. I was working at the Air Force Base and was about to see, I think a colonel was coming in for some services. It was his first time, and I got word that he was being very mean and ugly to the one of the admin folks. I don't know what I said to him, but I know I was really upset when he walked in my office. um,
Okay.
because I was like, there's no reason for you, whatever's going on, to take it out on her.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't lead with that. I didn't lead with my anger. I talked to him. I had him sit down. We had a conversation. Found out what was going on with him. And I was prepared to address before he went out there that, he owed her an apology. But just based on the way I treated him, before he left, he said he confessed what he did. And he indicated he didn't know what was wrong with him, why he did that. And he said that he was going to go out and apologize. And he did.
Mm.
So, um, two things, I guess, the reason I shared that story is I was prepared to address it, and I was going to say, "Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on?" There's a way
Mhm.
you can address people's behavior too. The way
Yeah.
you can, call them out, and call them people out on their behavior isn't always a big negative confrontation. It's more about saying something like, "I understand. There was a little confrontation earlier. You want to tell me what was going on?" So giving them and leading with, I guess it's just leading with curiosity,
Mhm.
bringing it up, leading with curiosity, and but that takes being able to pause and make sure that your feelings are, you know, out of the window. You're really not leaning into your feelings, but you're really leaning into what are the facts of the situation. Here's what I understand happened. Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on? What was your experience? And then that can lead to some clarity about, how they handle it, and if you want to start talking about different ways of handling situations when you're feeling out of sorts.
Yeah, I love that leading with curiosity because a lot of times when people come into a difficult conversation, they come in with accusations. And that's why it goes off the rails early on because we're not asking the questions. We're coming in with these declarative statements and pretty much wagging a finger and said, you did this and I heard is the other thing. I heard you did this and I heard you did that. Now they're
Yeah,
thinking like, well, who told you that? So now we've created an extra, layer of something because they got to go figure out who's been gossiping about me, that kind of thing. But
right.
I like the just staying neutral and asking a question that opens up the conversation for them to tell you their
Hmm.
perspective of how things went. And I think we could all use that in terms of managing conflict because a lot of people of the style that we're talking about today have told me they don't like conflict. I like that you have set boundaries. There are people who they sugarcoat things so much. They're so busy trying to preserve that relationship that they're
Yes,
not willing to call people out on things.
right.
And they don't even know if they got to tell another person that there is an issue. The other side doesn't even know it because they sugarcoated it so heavily. We don't even know we got a problem here.
Yeah, and the thing is, and so you said something really key too. They're trying to preserve the relationship without realizing that this person would benefit from hearing the truth from them. And so, if you can be honest with this person about your feelings, about the situation, as opposed to sugarcoating it or just not even telling them the truth,
Mhm.
that person would value you even more. It's, for being willing to tell them the truth, and you can tell them the truth in love.
Yeah.
The truth doesn't always have to hurt, but you don't have to always prepare people so that, and think everybody is thin skinned. There's just a way of sharing information that would be helpful. But you're right, a lot of people struggle with that. So if I have to give feedback or deal with conflict, it's never one where it's like, oh, okay, sign me up. It's you have to just think about it and plan for it. Plan what
Hmm.
is the best way to have this conversation, but avoiding conflict is never the answer.
So what do
Now,
we do?
avoiding conflict when you're emotional upset, yes, I say pause, take some moments to get your own feelings, but just avoiding it because you don't want to deal with it, things end up escalating in the future.
Yeah. So what do we do with those people? Because I've heard this mentioned twice today and even earlier this week, where people have, I guess, defined your style in this sense that some people are too sensitive. You just mentioned about being thin skinned. So there are folks who are saying, I just speak up, I just shoot straight. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but I think people are too soft these days. What's your response to that?
Well, I guess my response is sometimes that can be said as a way of preventing yourself from having to change your approach. So it's like, I really don't have time to deal with people whose feelings get hurt easily. You're too sensitive. So when you label someone as too sensitive, then you're pretty much invalidating their style. You're
Mhm.
invalidating their way of being in the world. And it's not that that person is going to crumble. It's just this person has a different way of doing things. They have a different way of responding to things. They have a different way of hearing things. And so let's turn it around and say, hey, what about you? How would you like, it's not just a matter of how would you like to experience things, but you would like for folks to take into account your preferences, what you need for support, and in the same way that you want to be treated fairly, equitably,
Mhm.
how can we use that same approach and treat this other person fairly and equitably, knowing that they are different from you? So knowing that they're going to hear things in a different way, and you might need to tailor your approach. What's wrong with that? You're not changing who you are. And this is what I tell a lot of the leaders I work with. They've many of them have gotten feedback that they're too harsh, that they're too direct, and then they say, "Well, this is part of my personality. This is part of my
Mhm.
culture." And I'll say, "Well, when you decide that you're going to alter your approach, you're not changing who you are. You're learning a different skill set."
Mhm.
Sometimes we use metaphors over and over again. It's like you're just adding another tool to the toolbox. So I'm tired of the toolbox, but let's look at it as you're adding another skill to the skill set.
Yeah.
So, yes, if you see someone that needs correcting on your team, maybe they are always late with their deadlines, maybe they've made too many errors or whatever the case, they didn't get back to you in time. You don't always have to yell at people in order to get them
Mm.
to see the error of their ways. But you can have a conversation with them so that they can hear you. So, hey, you can even do it in a way where they will start owning up and admitting what they did that was incorrect. And there's a way you can have a conversation with them so that they can begin to start troubleshooting and say, hey, next time, this is what I'm going to do. So, yes, I realize that this is what I did this time,
Mhm.
but next time I think I can do it this way. And so that's kind of the types of things that I help folks do is figure out that script. What's a template? Because there's a very uh, easy, I say easy, there is a framework for
Mhm.
giving feedback, for allowing your direct reports or your peers who are causing trouble or
Mhm.
really given you a lot of conflict. Maybe you don't get along, but there's a framework for having a conversation with them so that it's not so negative. And
Mhm.
you can learn how to do that even if you're a direct person. It doesn't change who you are. But having the conversation in this way can allow you to not only salvage a relationship with your peers or people across the organization, but it can actually do it in a way so that you are now developing a better understanding of this other person. They're walking away from this conversation with more respect for you because of the way you approach them. And the two of you can now begin to collaborate in a manner that you might not have done so before.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really not a matter of someone being too flighty, too sensitive, but it's
Right.
really more, oh, they're different.
And I think it has a lot to do with a person's value system. So if there's certain things that I will not tolerate as a person, there's some things that might be fine with somebody else. You can talk to them that kind of way. You can say those kinds of things to them and they don't take offense to it. I'm going to go back to those boundaries you set. If my
Hmm.
value system says respect looks like this to me and
Hmm.
I want to be respected, now I feel like you've crossed a line
Hmm.
of where I determine respect is for me. I'm going to have to call you out on that because I
Hmm.
feel disrespected. It's not me being super sensitive. It's just that I feel like you just disrespected me. I think I
Yeah.
told a story in another episode where I had a friend who, she's very loose. They like to call each other the B word. These women like to call each other the B word. I hadn't seen her in years and years and years. We went to college together and happened to come across her and had lunch out with her and some friends. And she was trying to talk to me in that same way. No, I'm nobody's B word. Okay. So
Right.
I'm not being super sensitive. I just have a level of respect for myself that I will
Right.
not allow you to address me in that way. And
Yes.
she didn't get offended by it, but I can see it kind of shocked her that I would, kind of shut that down at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's that. And you don't know you've crossed my lines because you don't know where my lines are. That's why
Right.
we have to be careful and assertive enough to say, well, here they are. You don't have to do it in a mean way,
Right.
right? And argue or fuss with anybody or call them a name back or anything. You just got to say, here's a line for me. And
Right.
so, and here's what I accept and here's what I reject. And let
Hmm.
people know what works for you and what doesn't. So,
Exactly.
and I appreciate what you just shared in terms of how to do it because a lot of people just don't know how.
Right.
Uh, Dr. Bessellieu, they just try to figure out. I'm trying to, for your particular style, when I've coached people of, that whole very gentle style,
Hmm.
they say, Betty, first of all, I don't like conflict. And I'm not sure because I don't like it, I'm not sure how to handle it. Now, it's
Hmm.
not that they don't. But what I hear them say most often is people mistake my kindness for weakness.
Hmm.
And ultimately, I might not go head to head with you, but at some point, if you push me hard enough, I'm going to come back and defend myself.
Right. Right. Yes.
Where's the line there? When should they step up and be assertive? Do you think they should react immediately or can they step back a little bit and take some time first for their own well-being, their mental well-being before they address some of the harder stuff?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I think people, even people that you were just describing, that are really really kind and say they often get mistaken for weakness. I think they have to learn how to be assertive early on, because when you end up making um, allowances for other people's behavior, you allow people to do things and it really bothers you, but I'm not going to say anything to,
Right.
to keep the peace. That's a
Yeah.
problem.
They go along to get along. Mhm.
Right. Yeah, that's a big problem.
Mhm.
Because if I'm saying something to you, Betty, and it's bothering you and you decide, well, I don't want to make a big deal out of it because I don't think she meant anything by it, but then I do it again and it's still bothering you. And then next time you see me, I do it again, and then all of a sudden you blow up at me, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
This has never been an issue with us before. So now
Right.
I'm feeling a certain kind of way because it's for me. All of a sudden, you're changing, right? Whereas had you just told me in the first place that you don't like this,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have been an issue. So to
Yep.
recognize that assertiveness is not the same as aggressiveness. So
Mhm.
sometimes people don't speak up because it could be now I'm putting on my psychologist hat. It could be that growing up, expressing anger was not accepted in the household. It meant
Mhm.
something totally different. It meant disrespect. Expressing a difference of opinion was not valued.
Mhm.
Um, or whenever they saw people expressing a difference of opinion, it showed up aggressively, and they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to
Yeah.
invite conflict in their lives. So as an adult, they never really learned how to express those differences.
Yeah.
And so when challenges in the workplace come up, those dynamics are still there. They still haven't learned how to stand up for themselves. And so
Mhm.
being able to express themselves assertively in their head looks and sounds like an aggressive response. Whereas when you are assertive, assertiveness just means that my needs are just as important as your needs.
Mm-hmm.
They're not more important than your needs. They're not less important. They are just as. A
Mm-hmm.
person who is aggressive says that my needs are more important than yours in this moment in time. So there's got to be a different level of power dynamics there. Where
Yeah.
assertiveness just says, no, we're all the same. I'm going to respect you, and I'd like you to respect me. And here's how we can
Mm-hmm.
do that.
That's good. Because when I think about, we had done in 2 episodes ago, we talked about the dominant style. And I
Mhm.
often think about when I'm teaching this, what happens, you just mentioned that power dynamic, that hierarchy. What happens when, say, you have a dominant manager that has an employee that's, this kind of softer, more stable style,
Mhm.
and they have to interact. That manager has to give directives or delegate work or critique or evaluate, the work of this person. What does that look like? And what does that manager who is a dominant person need? What do they have to keep in mind, or should they keep in mind when they are leading somebody whose style is so different from theirs? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
what I hear a lot of times is that's the ones that are called soft. It's like, they just overreact to stuff. They're too sensitive. I don't mean anything. Like, yeah, but they gotta be aware,
So,
right?
yeah, self awareness is first. And so, one of
Mhm.
the questions I love to ask all leaders, but especially those who, well, yeah, I do this with all of them. But in the case of someone who's dominant, I would ask them, what type of leader do you want to be? What type of leader do you see yourself as?
Right.
One time I was coaching a woman who was complaining about a direct report who wasn't showing up when she was supposed to and who always had an excuse, and she was telling me this direct report, her behavior had changed over the past few months, and so she knew something was wrong, but she said, she just kept saying over and over, I just want her to do her job. I just want her to show up and do her job. And finally I just said to her, let's switch gears just a minute. Tell me, what type of leader do you see yourself as? How do
Mhm.
you think you're showing up? And she said, she took a minute and she thought about it. And she says, well, I'd like to think that the people that work for me could come to me at any point in time. And if they're having any problems, they could tell me and they'd know that I'd be there for them.
Mm.
And I just sat there and looked at her. And then she said, oh, oh, so it was great seeing that light bulb go off in her. And I
Yeah.
said,
Like, think about
you
it.
know, yeah, think
Mhm.
about it. And I said,
Mhm.
so how would that leader that you aspire to be respond to this person? And then that's when she pulled back and said, okay, I guess we do
Mhm.
need to have a conversation. And I guess I do need to, but she was, I guess, so focused on not, she, on the other hand, the other piece I didn't share was she really didn't want to dig into this person's personal life and feel like she was intruding.
Mm.
But it was really clear that whatever was going on personally was bleeding over and spilling into her work
Yeah.
life, so
Yeah.
that there was a problem. So it was like, okay, but let's talk about how your work environment um, can contribute and what resources are available to help her manage
Mhm.
until she can whatever. So that led to a different conversation. But so often we get so much in our heads about, I just want them to do the work. But when
Mhm.
you start asking those dominant people, for example, yes, you're task oriented. Yes, things need to be done. You want it done in a certain way. But by and large, as you think about your role and how you are helping this direct report, what's the relationship like? What do you think the relationship needs? So now you're not talking about what that other person is doing wrong, but you're talking about this leader. What is it that the leader needs to do to guide this person and to
Mhm.
really help them do their job well? Because they have strengths, they are valued employees. So how can you help them to lean into all of those skills that they were hired for?
Mhm. Mhm. And so you make such a good. There's so many things that you said here. I think the whole, and I love that you define what the difference is between being assertive and aggressive, because I don't think people understand the distinction there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think for this particular style we're talking about, um, I think they might be misinformed in terms of what assertiveness looks like versus aggressiveness. They may see all things as aggressive, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just me stepping up and identifying for you what works for me and what doesn't, and how I speak up for myself. I find this. I don't know if you see it, Dr. Leslie. Women leaders. I find this
Mm-hmm.
more frequent amongst women leaders, where they are so quiet in the room that they become invisible. I tell them that all the time. They are doing fantastic work,
Mm-hmm.
but to speak up about themselves seems to be, to them, this is their kind of mindset, is
Mm-hmm.
arrogance or boastfulness. And I'm saying, no, this is you taking control of what you're doing and helping people to see what
Right.
you are providing and offering in your workplaces or in anywhere, but not just even at work. But
Exactly.
this is
Yeah,
you just helping people to see what you do, because if sometimes we have to spell it out for people, they won't
we
see
have
it.
to.
And that's why folks oftentimes, especially women leaders, will oftentimes get passed over for opportunities and projects and further advancement, because they're too busy playing it safe and modest, and they
Yes,
won't, yeah,
thinking.
and they won't speak up.
Yes, thinking that, well, people should see that I work hard. They should see what I do.
Should.
Part of, and that doesn't happen. It's like
Right.
there's a reason you see them. The men will introduce themselves and they're giving all their accolades and they're giving everything they've done. Part of it, I think, a large part of it has to do with the ways that we're socialized. We're not
Mhm.
socialized to talk about ourselves, or
Right.
we'll talk about, and I've seen this among many women leaders. We'll talk about what we did as a team. I helped my team this, and my team did that, and it's like, okay, but what did you do?
Mhm.
Where nowhere in this discussion are we hearing about your leadership. So
Mhm.
when we move into leadership or we're wanting to be considered for leaders, it's vital that we're able to talk about not just team accomplishments, but yes, I was able to do X, Y, and Z. I
Mhm.
helped my team do this. We did this. But talking about I sounds a whole lot like bragging, and
Right.
many of us are just not comfortable with that. So it's like we have to reframe what
Mhm.
we're doing in the workplace and how we're talking about accomplishments in the work that we do so that we can get recognized for the things that we're doing.
Mhm. One of the things I think you mentioned a little while ago that I think is so incredibly important for people to keep in mind is that people bring their whole selves to work. So I know we're in the workplace, but you got to realize that when you're talking to people, their work is, well, it shouldn't be their lives. I know some people, that's a big identifier for them, their role, their position, their job. So it
Hmm.
becomes such a huge part of who they are. And that's fine, but you have to understand there's more to them. How did they get where they are? So when we
Right.
go back to, if they were to really do some soul searching and some introspective work and look back in their past, who were they when they were just coming into the workforce, or who were they when they were in their teen years? Who were they when they were just 8, 9 years old, or the 6 year old them? And what kind of life experiences did they have? So to your point, if I grew up in a household that did not show me how to communicate my feelings well, then I might be somebody who is reticent to do that, because that wasn't really something that we embraced, right? You don't talk about feelings, or you don't show emotions in here. Or if there was, a hostile environment in which I grew up in, and I saw how painful it was, and I experienced that pain, and it causes me anxiety even today when I hear people raise their voices or whatever,
Yes.
it has some impact on me. So they're bringing all of that history
Hmm.
to their relationships, whatever spaces they occupy. So if you befriend them, if you go to church with them, if you serve on certain committees with them, if you go to work with them, whatever it is, wherever they exist,
Hmm.
all of that comes with them. And I don't think we think about that. We deal with moments in time and
Right.
whatever quick little interactions we have with people. And we don't think about, well, who is this person as a whole?
That's true.
Is that
And
impossible? I mean, am I asking too much for people to be more considerate about the whole person, or is it one
no,
of those situations where be like, I'm not here to be your friend, I'm just here to work, let's just
but
get
see,
this.
unfortunately, where there are too many people who say, "I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to work." Part of part of understanding all of these different styles of working involves knowing what people need to do their best work. So um, it's been said that if you are task focused, then when, in order to form a relationship with someone in the workplace, they want to know that you can do the work.
Mm,
When they see that you can work well, then it's like, oh, okay, I want to get to know him. I want to get to know her. We can be friends.
mhm,
The people that are more relationship focused, we're kind of like, yeah, I'll work with you, but I really want to know if I like you. I mean, can we get along? Do we have similar
mhm,
values? And tell me about, with that touchy feely stuff, and then that way we decide, do I want to be on your team or whatever the case is? And
mhm,
we can really be loyal to people if we like them.
mhm,
And so that's kind of what happens. And so it's like both are needed. So it's
mhm,
important to understand the whole person. I mean, you
mhm.
don't always get that. And so this is why it's important to understand that everyone doesn't always approach their work in the same way. Everyone doesn't always need the same things. And it is important to understand that, yes, we all have histories and we do bring them to the workplace. Not only the personal history from childhood, from college, if you went to college, from the military, whatever that, but your other work experiences you bring
Mhm.
into your current one. So
Yeah.
I worked with a nonprofit once, and there were some individuals there who had come from a corporate environment. And in that corporate environment, it was strictly task focused. And not only was it task focused, but it was really sounded like a toxic work environment.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, this person had experienced a lot of micromanagement from um, her supervisor. And so when she came into, of course, now coming from that setting to a nonprofit, totally different concept, right? In
Mhm,
terms of how work is done. So she was given more autonomy, she had more freedom, but she still had that mindset
mhm,
of, okay, work, work, work. And it's not that work wasn't important, but just the level of focus was different.
mhm,
And it was hard
mhm.
for her to make the transition. And she was bringing some of those expectations of that corporate toxic environment into this nonprofit setting. So it
Yeah.
caused a clash. So we don't always understand why people are showing up the way they do, why they're acting the way they do, why they approach their work, their assignments the way they do. And so we won't know that unless we take the time to get to know each other. And when
Mhm.
someone is different from us, then we've got a that's a bigger challenge. And now it comes to bear where we need to figure out, well, why do they do it differently? I wonder
Mhm.
what makes them tick. How is it that they are approaching it? Maybe I can learn something from them.
I'm going to tell you when I have to go in and help consult in organizations, it does not matter what kind of service they provide or what product they provide.
Mhm.
That service cannot get done without people. That product cannot get made without people. It cannot get sold without people. And
Mhm.
so everything that happens in there has to be done by people most often. I know everything's getting automated now soon,
Yeah.
but companies aren't at a place where they run totally automated at this
Mhm.
particular point. So if you
Mhm.
got all these people in a workplace, especially when I'm in manufacturing companies,
Mhm.
you got tons of people in there building whatever it is that they're building. And so those folks have to learn how to get along. They got to learn how to work together. They got to learn how to produce a product that can go out that's high quality and satisfactory to their clients. So if we
Mhm.
don't fix the people issues that arise in those places, you're
Mhm.
going to you have the constant, turnover, that revolving door, and
Right.
companies lose every time they allow somebody to walk out simply because they haven't invested the time and the money in these people to get the training they need and to really take time to build culture and to understand each other. So I'm a big proponent. That's why I'm in this space. I just think it's so important for us as
Truly.
human beings to see
Mhm.
each other as human beings and to recognize what we need in order for us to work together. And it's not
That's
always
right.
the clashing and the head to head stuff. So, any final parting words that you would have for this particular style when it comes to continuing the building of this relationship that they so desire, but also to make sure that they're happy where they are and their relationship doesn't get their I'm sorry, their style doesn't get in the way. I'm going to leave this you with this term because they're often called people pleasers.
Yeah.
I hear
So
that. Somebody will say that in my class. Oh, I'm a people pleaser, and I know that gets in the way.
yeah. So there are a lot of people pleasers, and I don't know that they are always the type that are um, helpers or supporters. So I don't want people with this, supportive style to feel like, okay, they're being lumped in the same category as people pleaser. And I don't know, maybe people pleaser may be a subset, but there's a different reason for the people please. I know some folks that are very task focused and task oriented that
Mhm.
are serious people pleasers, and I've had to help them learn how to say no and set boundaries too.
Yes, say
So it's not
no.
always associated with this S style.
Okay.
Okay. So I will say that. People pleasers do have to get in touch with what's most important to them. And
Mhm.
sometimes they have to start to figure that out for themselves. They haven't done that. And it makes it very difficult for them to then make a decision that's based on them versus other people. So that's something totally different.
So it's a
Um,
whole totally different kind of, oh, okay, all right.
yeah,
Because this is
yeah,
how people identify, and I was accepting it as they did too, because they feel like I don't want to, rock the boat. If there's
yeah,
anything that needs to get done, I don't mind doing it. But they'll tell me, because I'm always trying to be the one to get along with people and do whatever my manager asks me. I find that I feel put upon. Um,
sure.
my time management is terrible because I'm taking
Yeah.
on all this extra work because I have not used to keep I have not learned how to say no yet. I'm afraid to
Mm,
say no because it doesn't look like I'm a team player. So they're
okay.
doing everything to satisfy what everybody else needs, and it's
Sure.
weighing them down at the same time. So they
Of
identify
course.
themselves as that. So you're
That's
saying
a,
that
I'm saying that's a real thing, but that's not necessarily the S that we're talking about. So everybody who is an S, I can't say that the majority of them fall into the people pleasing role. It may be that people pleasers are a subset of this group, but I have also seen people pleasers that have the D's and the
I got
I's.
you.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay, all right. And by the way,
Hmm.
y'all, because we just started using these letters, that's from our one of the assessments that we do. And an S style is the steadiness person that we're talking about. This one that brings stability and support and all that we've been talking about the whole time here. So you're saying even though people are, these compassionate, kind, loving people who are, kind of calm and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are people pleasers. They
Correct.
just have that disposition where they're not going to be all of the stuff that we described earlier. All right, I got you. So that's a
Yes.
subset of them. All right, beautiful.
Hmm.
All right.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I would just say, in terms of our discussion, that let's take some, be intentional about understanding differences, especially today in the world that we live in.
Right?
Let's take some comfort in saying, hey, it's good to have similar values and interests and bond over our similarities, but let's really start looking at what makes each of us unique. Whether you start looking at different family members or your best friends and say, hey, you're more creative than I am. Why? What do you like about painting? Or what is you're always in a book. What's so fascinating about that? I'm just curious, how did you get that way? So let's start asking people questions to gain an understanding of why they are the way they are, and not with the intent of, because sometimes people will say, well, why do you do that? Well, don't you think you should do this? So they're really not looking to see and understand how you
Mhm.
got to where you are, but they're trying to figure out why you're not like them.
Why
And
you're
I
not
think,
like them? I
yeah,
like
I
that.
think unfortunately, some people may be a little threatened when they see folks that do things differently. Again, maybe they have this mindset of there's only one or two right ways to do things. And so if now
Mhm.
there's this third way of doing something, it challenges their view of the
Mhm.
right way to do things. So that can be a problem. But I
Yeah.
think if we can begin to open ourselves up and be more flexible in our thinking and in the ways that the different ways that we approach tasks,
Mhm.
particularly in the workplace, it's like, yes, we can approach it differently as long as we have the same goal. We all
Mhm.
want the same results. We just have a different way of getting there. And let's figure out a way to be more accommodating in helping each other get to that final
Yeah.
destination.
Yeah. I always learn so much when I sit and talk to you. I really am glad that you came today, and I hope you'll come back because I just think there's so much that we can glean from, the I don't know, I guess the fine, even the nuanced things that we don't think about with each other. And your point hit home strongly when you say, people look at other folks and they're judging them based on their own standards. And why aren't you like me? Versus allowing people to be how they are. And I know diversity has gotten a bad name here of late, but we are different. And
Mhm.
being able to appreciate those differences in us so we can make whatever adjustments are necessary so that we can work better together and live together. We haven't talked a lot about the personal aspects of this, but you have these varying styles even within your own family dynamics. And we
Absolutely.
can get along well with some family members and not so well with others, right? And
Right.
it's our approaches to certain things. So
Yes.
thank you for all of the distinctions, all the definitions, all of the insights into these various styles. And I hope you'll come back again and talk to us a little bit more.
Thank you for having me, Betty. It's been an absolute pleasure. I learned so much from you as well. So this is a great discussion, and I look forward to more.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks so much. Enjoy your week.
Thank you. You too.
All right.